Hello. In this video we're going to talk about the text level or inline HTML elements. Now, how do these differ from the elements we have covered in the previous HTML videos? Well, because inline is a different type of element from block. The previous elements, headings, paragraphs, article, aside, nav, and so on, have all been what are known as block level or block elements. And what that means is they create a standalone block around what they enclose. So a block by default goes full width of the browser from left to right, and it doesn't go in a horizontal line with anything else. These characteristics can be changed with CSS, but this idea of by default an element is either block or inline is one of these kind of fundamental concepts about the way HTML functions. So if you look at the W3C, which is of course the arbiter of all web things and all HTML, you'll find that there's a very, very long list of these text level elements. And we are not going to talk about all of them. We're actually going to talk about just a few. We're going to talk about M, strong, BR, and span. Now the rest of these elements are usable, they're valid elements. It's just that they're not commonly used. You're not going to need to know them by heart. You're not going to come across them in your everyday beginner HTML work. If you look at the MDN elements reference, it's also pretty handy because you can see a little trash can beside elements that have been deprecated or that are now obsolete because HTML has been around for a while and some of these tags and elements are no longer used. So let's look at examples of these four elements that I'm going to cover. First, we will look at M, and let's open up this paragraph in the Chrome Developer Tools, and you'll see that right here I've got a paragraph, a normal paragraph, a P element, and within that I have surrounded some words and some phrases in the EM element. And what EM is meant to do is to show stress emphasis. What is stress emphasis? The purpose of it is to show emphasis so that when you are reading these terms, if you were reading them out loud, you would stress that these are fundamental values. You would stress that the students should commit to holding themselves and their peers. You would say a person who becomes aware of a violation is bound by honor. So this is the meaning and the purpose of the EM element. By default, most browsers make the contents, the text contents in an EM element, italics. But it's important for you to understand that you don't use it to make italics. You use it to indicate emphasis, stress emphasis. Similarly, how is the strong tag used? The strong element, usually most browsers will make the text within the strong element bold, but the purpose is not to change the way it looks. The purpose of the element is to indicate that this particular text within a P or another block element is very important, very serious, or very urgent. So you use the element to indicate the meaning of the content. And you notice that it is inside a paragraph. So no matter how wide this paragraph is, the paragraph doesn't split out into two. The strong element is contained within the P. The next element we're going to look at is the often misused BR element. Now, this might seem a little bit odd, this element. It is one of the empty elements. It does not contain anything. That means it is a single tag, not a pair of tags. It is used to break a line. But if you put it in the middle of a paragraph, that would be an incorrect use of it, just to change the way the text looked in your browser. It's meant to be used where a line has to break, must break. So one example of using BR is to use it in poetry, as shown here. So we put a BR tag at the end of each line because these lines are expected to break no matter what, and the whole poem is contained within a single paragraph. Similarly, if we used a BR tag in a street address, it is a correct semantic use of the BR tag because the entire address is in a paragraph and we want each line of the mailing address to break no matter what the width of the browser is. I want to demonstrate an incorrect use of the BR element. And this is very common among beginners because you haven't learned CSS yet, and perhaps you're thinking when you look at some text in your browser and your browser is the full width of your laptop screen or your desktop screen, you say, well, my goodness, in this paragraph here, these lines are way too long. I want to make the lines shorter. The correct way to do that is to style the document with CSS, but you might make a mistake and say, well, I'm going to put some BR tags here. So I might go into Atom and put a BR here. And save that and reload it. And then I say, oh my, that doesn't look right. Maybe I'll put a BR after this. And you see what starts to happen. This line is now shorter than you thought it would be, but the real danger is when somebody is looking at your page on a narrower device. The device will have a smaller width and your text is going to break up, your paragraph is going to break up in a very ugly, unpleasant way. That is why we only use the BR element for poetry, for street addresses, and on rare occasions for anything else where a line absolutely has to end. These lines do not have to end where we put the break tags a moment ago, and in fact, those BR tags should not be there. So if I take them out, save, and reload, you'll see that now that paragraph looks the way it should, no matter what the width of the browser is. And that's why you do not use BR tags arbitrarily inside normal paragraphs. The last of the inline elements that we'll cover in this video is span. Span is not going to be very useful to you until you learn CSS, but then it can be very useful. So that's coming up soon, and Robbins covers span and div together in one section of chapter 5. I will cover div in a later video. Div is a block level element. Span is an inline element like the others we've covered in this video, and it is a completely flexible, unstyled element. So the way span is used is you would assign it a class or an ID, and with that class or ID, you would make it look different or act differently than it does normally. So you use a span within a block element, such as a P element, a paragraph, and then you use styles to assign different properties to that text enclosed in the span element. So in this paragraph, you'll see that I have two spans. One of them has been assigned a yellow background highlight cover, and the other has been assigned a font weight of bold and a text color of blue. Inside the opening span tag, you can add various classes and or IDs that affect the text enclosed in the span element, and it allows you complete flexibility to do anything you want with that text while keeping it inside a normal paragraph. We've only covered 4 of the many possible inline tags that are used in HTML, but remember you can look up others that are less common at either MDN or at the W3C when the need arises.